Hello again, and welcome to our weekly roundup of news and information for the radio and television trade. Direct broadcasting by satellite, a new television consortium to provide the first 3 channels, and independent national radio could be on the air in 1990.
Also today, a look at last week's exhibition held by the Confederation of Aerial Industries. And in transmitter news, 2 new television relays. In Derbyshire, Hartington, and in Wales, Chepstow. More details later.
2 years ago, the government gave the BBC the go-ahead for 2 DBS channels. These were generally expected to begin in about 1986, and subsequently the government announced plans to allow the IBA also to have 2 channels, hoped for the late 80s. However, DBS is a high-risk, high-cost venture. The latest financial projections suggest that a service would not break even until it can attract some 2 million subscribers, and this is likely to take a number of years. The uncertainties led to doubts as to whether at the outset there could be room for competing services, and discussions followed between the BBC, IBA and the ITV companies. Meanwhile, 1986, as the lift-off year for DBS, began to look increasingly unlikely.
Last week in the House of Commons, the Home Secretary proposed a new formula designed to secure the start of DBS within the next 3 or 4 years. The details are contained in amendments to the Cable and Broadcasting Bill, now receiving its second reading in the Commons. The key to the new plan is the formation of a consortium to finance and run 3 new channels. This will be a joint venture between the BBC and the independent sector. The BBC is to have a 50% share. Those ITV companies who wish to become involved will have around 25%, with the remaining 25% or so made up of other companies and organisations. The exact percentage shares of the independent sector have yet to be finalised. The IBA has been asked to advise, and we will shortly be inviting interested organisations to contact us. Under the proposals contained in the bill, the final seal of approval on the make-up of the consortium will then rest with the Home Secretary.
The £400 million project will provide the first 3 of the 5 available channels, a film channel and 2 channels of mixed programming. Responsibility for transmission and for programme standards and content will be given to a new statutory body drawn from members of the BBC's Board of Governors and members of the IBA. No public money is to be used, and there's to be no additional licence fee. To start with, it's likely that the new channels will be funded by subscription, but it will be up to the consortium to decide whether or not to include advertising. The satellite itself will be built by Unisat, that's the British consortium which includes British Aerospace.
The first transmissions are now hoped to begin in 1987 or 88, and the consortium is planned to last for a maximum of 10 years. According to the Home Secretary, Mr. Leon Britton, 10 years has been chosen so as to provide an adequate period over which the project can build up an audience, recoup its initial outlay and move towards profit. After the first 3 years of 3-channel DBS, the IBA would then be allowed to invite applications for the remaining 2 of the 5 available channels. These would take 3 to 4 years to set up and probably won't be on the air until the mid-1990s. All these proposed amendments to the Cable and Broadcasting Bill were put forward by the Home Secretary in his speech last week. It remains to be seen exactly what form the final version of the bill will take.
Also proposed by the Home Secretary, 2 new national VHF radio networks in 1990. The BBC will have 1 additional national transmitter network, making a total of 4, and the IBA is to have an independent national radio network. The Cable and Broadcasting Bill is expected to contain provisions to allow us to begin a programme of transmitter construction in just over a year's time, necessary for the network to be ready by 1990. With some local radio stations already using frequencies up to around 104 MHz, all the more reason to ensure that any new aerials you install are designed to cover the entire range, 88 to 108 MHz.
This week's transmitter news now, starting with special announcements. In Scotland, Darius continues on reduced power, pending a replacement aerial system later in the year.